You earn more than you've ever earned. You can afford less than you could 10 years ago. And every time you try to figure out why, the numbers don't make sense. That's not a budgeting problem. That's a system designed to make you feel crazy. In 2010, a $100,000 salary meant something specific. It meant one job, health insurance, a mortgage you could actually handle, and the feeling, not just the hope, but the actual grounded feeling that you were going to be okay. In 2026, $100,000 still sounds like a lot. But the person earning it often can't explain where the money goes. They got raises, they did everything right, and somehow they're more stressed about money than they were when they made less. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what happened between 2010 and 2026 that turned a six-figure salary from a marker of safety into a source of anxiety. Not just the inflation numbers, those are part of it, but they don't tell the real story. The real story is about what changed structurally, psychologically, and economically that made the same number on your paycheck mean something completely different. And near the end, I'm going to show you a statistic about financial stress in America right now that is so extreme, it sounds like it can't possibly be true. But it is. And it explains everything. Let's get into it. So here's the first thing you need to understand, because this is the piece that makes everything else make sense. $100,000 in 2010, adjusted for general inflation, would need to be about $148,643 in 2026 to have the same purchasing power. That's almost a 49% increase just to stay in place. So right away, if you're making $100,000 in 2026, you're actually making less in real terms than someone who made $100,000 in 2010. That's the baseline. But here's where it gets much worse and much weirder. Because the general inflation number, the one the government uses, the Consumer Price Index, measures a hypothetical basket of goods weighted equally across the whole economy. It treats a television and a hospital visit as though they matter the same amount to your budget. They don't. And when you break inflation apart by category, the picture goes from bad to disturbing. Since 1973, median household income grew by about 1,015%. That sounds impressive until you see what happened to the things you actually need. Home prices grew by 1,045%, outpacing wages. College tuition rose by 177% for public schools and 158% for private. Healthcare costs per person went from roughly $8,000 to $9,000 a year in 2010 to over $15,400 in 2024. And the median home price hit $403,200 in 2026, with mortgage rates sitting at 6 to 7% compared to 4 to 5% in 2010. So here's what this means in plain English. The stuff you can skip, a new phone, a bigger TV, a nicer pair of shoes, streaming subscriptions, got cheaper or stayed flat. Technology deflation kept those prices down. The stuff you absolutely cannot skip, your house, your health insurance, your kids' school, food on the table, got dramatically more expensive. And the inflation number everyone talks about on the news is an average of both categories blended together, which means the official number makes it look like prices went up about 49%, but for the things that actually determine whether you feel financially safe or not, prices went up 60, 70, sometimes 100% or more. The CPI tells you what happened to the economy. It doesn't tell you what happened to your life. And there's one more layer that makes this even worse. Research on inflation patterns from 2010 to 2023 found that lower-income households consistently experience higher inflation rates than higher-income households, an average difference that compounds dramatically over 16 years. So it's not just that essentials inflated faster than luxuries. It's that the less money you have, the more inflation you personally experience. The system is regressive at every level. But here's the thing that makes this truly psychologically damaging, and this is the part the thesis I went through identified as potentially the most important finding in the whole analysis. When someone takes a 10% pay cut, it's a clear problem with a clear cause. You know what happened. You know why you have less money. Your brain can process that. It's painful, but it's coherent. The story makes sense. But when your pay goes up 15% over 5 years while your housing costs go up 40%, your healthcare costs go up 30%, And your kid's tuition goes up 25%. Something much stranger happens in your head. You look at your paycheck and it's bigger than it's ever been. You look at your bank account and it's smaller than it should be, and you can't figure out why. The story doesn't make sense. You're earning more and affording less, and the contradiction creates a form of mental distress that's actually worse than a straightforward pay cut. The research calls this undermining individuals' sense of economic agency and rationality. I call it gaslighting by spreadsheet. Because the macro data says you're doing fine. Your salary went up. The economy is growing. Unemployment is low. But your lived experience says you're drowning. And when the official story and your personal reality don't match, the brain defaults to the simplest explanation. I must be doing something wrong. I must be bad with money. I must be spending too much. But you're not. The math is broken. The inflation that matters to your actual life is running at double or triple the rate of the inflation that gets reported. And nobody is telling you that. So you blame yourself for a problem that was designed structurally to be invisible. I want to tell you about a couple that puts this into sharp focus. Both mid-30s, combined income in 2010 about $95,000. They bought a house for $210,000, put 10% down, locked in a 4.8% mortgage. Monthly payment about $1,100 including taxes and insurance. They had employer health insurance through his job. Childcare for one kid ran about $800 a month. They weren't rich, but they could see the math working. Savings account grew. Retirement contributions went in every month. They took a vacation once a year. The feeling wasn't luxury. It was control. They understood their money. Fast forward to 2026. Same couple, now early 40s. Combined income, $138,000. That's a 45% increase in 16 years. Sounds like progress, right? But the house they bought in 2010 is now worth $380,000. Great for equity, terrible for property taxes, which doubled. Childcare for their second kid, $1,400 a month. Health insurance premiums and out-of-pocket costs have risen so much that they're paying nearly $600 a month more than they were in 2010, even with employer coverage. Their grocery bill is up 35%. And they're trying to save for college in a world where a single year of public university costs over $10,000 in tuition alone, with the average graduate now carrying $39,457 in student debt. They earn $43,000 more per year than they did in 2010. And they have less money at the end of every month. They haven't taken a proper vacation in 2 years. The retirement contributions that used to go in automatically now get paused just for a month or two and then never restart. The wife told a financial planner, and this is the line that stayed with me, I keep thinking if I just tracked my spending better, I'd find the leak. But there is no leak. Everything just costs more and the raises don't keep up. She wasn't describing a budgeting failure. She was describing the bifurcated economy, an economy where wages grew modestly and essentials grew explosively, and nobody gave the gap a name. That story landed hard for me because I've felt that same confusion. That dissonance where you look at the number coming in and the number going out and the math should work, and it doesn't. And your first instinct is to look at yourself. What am I doing wrong? Rather than looking at the system that made the gap invisible. I think most people earning decent money right now have had that moment. The moment where you quietly wonder whether you're secretly terrible with money, even though you're doing everything you were told to do. That's not a personal failure. That's a structural one. But the structure is invisible, so the blame lands on you. Now that's the psychological layer. But there's a structural change underneath it that explains how $100 K went from feeling like safety to feeling like survival. And it has to do with what a $100,000 job actually looked like in 2010 versus what it looks like now. In 2010, a $100,000 salary almost certainly meant one job, one employer, one W-2. It came with health insurance, a retirement plan with some kind of employer match, paid time off, and the reasonable expectation that you'd still have the job next year. The income was stable, the benefits were included, and the structure was predictable. You knew what was coming in, you knew what was going out, and you could plan around both. Even though the economy was still recovering from the financial crisis, unemployment had peaked above 10% just a year earlier. The workers who had survived the storm and held on to six-figure jobs experienced a strange but real form of security. The bar had been set so low by the crash that simply having a stable, well-paying job felt like a genuine achievement. The direction was clearly upward. The narrative was coherent. You'd been through the worst, and now things were getting better. In 2026, $100,000 might still come from one traditional job. But increasingly, it doesn't. It comes from a primary job plus freelance work, or a salary plus gig driving on weekends, or two part-time contracts plus a side project. Quarterly work hours for gig workers jumped more than 17% between 2012 and late 2025, from about 87 hours to over 100. Not because people suddenly discovered a love for delivering food at midnight, but because single job income no longer covers the same life it used to cover. And the difference between one stable $100 K job and three fragmented income streams totaling $100 K is enormous, even though the number on the tax return looks the same. The single job earner has employer health insurance. The multi-stream earner is buying it on the marketplace or going without. The single job earner has a 401k match compounding quietly in the background. The multi-stream earner has no match, no automatic enrollment, and no safety net building itself while they sleep. The single job earner has unemployment insurance if things go wrong. The gig worker has nothing. So the same $100 K can mean two completely different lives. One with an infrastructure of protection built around it. The other naked, high income, zero safety net. This is why the housing math has broken so completely. In 2010, the ratio of home prices to median household income was about 3.1 to 1. Manageable. Tight, but within the range where a family could stretch into a mortgage and make it work. By 2026, that ratio has expanded to between 4.5 to 1 and 5.5 to 1, depending on the market. In many cities, it's worse. A $100,000 earner in 2010 could buy a home with conventional financing and feel like it was hard but doable. A $100,000 earner in 2026 in most major markets is either priced out entirely, taking on dangerous levels of debt, or waiting indefinitely for a correction that may never come. And the health insurance comparison is just as stark. Per capita healthcare spending was roughly $8,000 to $9,000 in 2010. By 2024, it was over $15,400. Employers entering 2026 are facing projected cost increases of 6.5 to 9% for that year alone. Deductibles are higher. Out-of-pocket maximums are higher. The coverage looks the same on paper, but the actual financial exposure of being sick has increased dramatically, even for people with good employer insurance. Put all of this together and you see the full picture. It's not just that prices went up. It's that the entire infrastructure that made $100 K feel safe, the single stable job, the employer benefits, the manageable housing ratio, the predictable healthcare costs, has been hollowed out from underneath the number. The salary stayed roughly the same in inflation-adjusted terms. Everything that made that salary mean something changed. And this brings us to the statistic I mentioned at the beginning. The one that ties all of this together and explains why the word safe doesn't mean what it used to mean. According to the National Endowment for Financial Education, 88% of Americans reported feeling financial stress as they entered 2026. 88%. Not lower-income Americans. Not people living paycheck to paycheck. 88% of everyone. And 77% said they experienced at least one financial setback in 2025. These are among the highest financial anxiety numbers ever recorded in the history of this polling question. And this is happening in what is, by every aggregate measure, the richest economy in the history of the world. GDP is up. Unemployment is historically low. The average salary reached $66,622. The stock market has delivered strong returns. By every headline metric, the economy is working. And yet nearly 9 out of 10 people say they're financially stressed. That gap between the macro story and the micro experience is the single most important thing to understand about money in 2026, Because it explains everything. It explains why you got a raise and feel poorer. It explains why you earn six figures and can't save. It explains why every financial article tells you the economy is fine while you lie awake at night wondering how you're going to pay for all the things you're supposed to be able to afford. The economy is performing well for the economy. It is not performing well for the people inside it. And the difference between those two things is where all the anxiety lives. So which $100K actually felt safe? I will say 2010 without question. Not because wages were higher, they weren't. Not because life was easy, it wasn't. The country was still climbing out of the worst financial crisis in 80 years. But the person earning $100,000 in 2010 lived inside a system that was coherent. The income came from one job. The benefits came with it. The housing was expensive but not impossible. The healthcare was costly but not catastrophic. And the psychological narrative made sense. You'd survived something terrible. Things were getting better, and the direction was upward. In 2026, the person earning $100,000 lives inside a system that is incoherent. The income might come from multiple sources, none of which offers full benefits or long-term stability. The housing is mathematically out of reach in many markets. The price-to-income ratio has stretched from 3.1 to 1 all the way to 4.5 or 5.5 to 1, and in some cities it's even worse. The healthcare costs are unpredictable and rising at 6.5 to 9% a year, faster than any raise you're likely to get. College costs for your kids have grown so far beyond wages that student debt averaging nearly $40,000 per graduate has become the default assumption, not the exception. And the psychological narrative is broken. You're told you're doing well, but you can feel that you're not, and nobody will explain the gap between those two things. That incoherence, that feeling of doing everything right and still falling behind, is the defining financial experience of this era. And it's not because people are bad with money. It's because the relationship between income and security has been restructured in ways that are invisible to the people living through it. If you take one thing from this video, let it be this. The next time you look at your paycheck and then look at your bank account and can't figure out where the money went, it's not you. The inflation that matters to your life is running at a completely different rate than the inflation that gets reported. And the system that was supposed to make a six-figure salary means safety has been quietly dismantled while the number on your pay stub stayed the same. I'm Billy, and I probably spend too much time thinking about why earning more money than your parents ever did can still leave you feeling broke, and why the explanation has almost nothing to do with how you spend, but on what changed around you. If that strikes a chord, subscribe, because that's exactly what we cover here.